All right, let's get started. So re yeah, so I guess research is new for most of us here. So, well, most of you here, not new for me. So today I'm just going to talk about the data collection and analysis and then jump right into how you're going to write it up in your final report. And also if you have a deadline in August. Yeah, so these slides are from Tania Agarwal and Steve Easterbrook, Professor Steve Easterbrook from University of Toronto. I think Tania just won a SRI scholar, like a PhD scholarship, and then Steve Easterbrook works on climates and responsible AI. Okay. So we'll talk about scientific data and why do you and then data collection and then data analysis. So I guess first question of the day, and I'm going to go alphabetical, is so get ready, is why do we need data? And so Divnor, go ahead. There's lots of questions, so I'm just going to go through them one by one. Divnor?
It gives you a good metric to sort of compare how you are doing as you going throughout the process of doing your research projects.
Yeah, good metric, good comparison. It sort of proves your point, like proves
Yeah.
your story. I mean, computer science. Yeah. Okay, great. And then next question, Miriam, what data can be used for scientific problem solving?
I think it kind of depends on the problem you're trying to solve. Like you'd want to find a data set that is relevant
Mm,
to that specific problem. So for example, if you're working in vision, you might want to look at more vision like QA data sets. Whereas if you're working more in like language reasoning, you'd be going more towards text data sets.
yeah, yeah, perfect. Yeah. Okay. And for data collection, right? So that's scientific data. So why do you need it and what is it? Now for data collection, do you need to collect data? So I guess that's for Nazar. So Nazar, do you need to collect data and how do you collect data for your project?
Oh yeah, for sure we need to collect data because you cannot solve a problem without facts. In my project,
Mm,
we just scraping web or we depending on existing data, but they collect data from social media posts. So for sure we need to collect data to prove our experiments or our task. And how
mm.
do we collect data? Like by doing tests, asking people, or surveys, or scraping web. It depends on the task.
Yeah. And I would also say that we do a lot of this in our lab here is that we also do human annotations and human
Yeah,
data collection. So your input data is from, some data set, some benchmark, some web data, but then you're also annotating or adding a dimension on top of it. So some people are running machine learning experiments, but some of you are actually running human experiments or, doing human annotations. Yeah, so that's really great. Thank you. Okay, third, data analysis. So what kind of data analysis are most appropriate? So this is going to be different for everyone. So I guess I will ask Santiago, are you healthy enough to answer, or would you like to skip?
Um, yeah, no, I can answer it. Don't worry.
Okay, what kind of data analysis is most appropriate for your research?
For my research, I guess right now is basically I would say not much of that analysis since we're only evaluating. We're
Hmm.
not like handling any new data. I
Hmm.
would say what's come the closest is basically using like statistical metrics such as like confidence intervals.
Mm,
um,
yep.
and yeah, that kind of stuff, like to measure whether the progress we're making or the results we're making are based on one run, or if they are like reliable and replicate and there is like replicability on our findings.
Yeah, reproducibility. Okay, great,
Yeah,
great.
that's the word.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So right now I'm just going to tell you about data collection and analysis. But I'm going to try and fit as much in as possible today because then I'm going to also tell you about how you're going to write the data section and the discussion section because, this is sort of like I'm telling you what you're supposed to do, but then I'm going to also tell you the end result of what you're trying to achieve when you write a paper publication because um, if you could write, if you know what the end result is, then you can sort of tar that rather than, you know, sort of like I wanted to give you like a finish line so that you know how to get there rather than you know, so that you have the most direct path rather than sort of wander a little bit and do some revisions. Okay, so scientific data. So why do we need data, right? So very good. You need data for decision making so that you can decide how to proceed. Like some of you are, for the knowledge graph project, you're trying different things, right? So you have to have some data from your experiments for you to decide how to proceed. In companies, a lot of times you will need data to help you make the right decisions. So if you go to business school, they'll talk a lot about that. You'll need data for communicating. In business, you're always communicating to your boss or trying to convince upper management or something, and we like to do it with data. For research, we definitely need data to prove that things work. And we also need it for evidence that something is working. So when we write our paper, remember last week I said, you need to prove that your method works. Well, how do you prove it? The evidence is in the data, the experimental data that you have. So you're running experiments, you have data, and this data proves that what you're doing makes sense. There's different types of scientific data. So we do a lot of quantitative data stuff. So it's a lot of numbers, scores, categories. Um, you know, um, Sometimes, mostly we do quantitative data on models and data sets. But um, I have so my research has three major categories, like data set models and then application. So the application people, like everyone doing HCI, you have quite a lot of qualitative data sets as well, right? Like, free text interviews, observational studies, like talking to people and sort of trying to get a sense of the direction. I guess this could also apply to data and models as well. Like if you just look at models and try to probe it and figure some things out. This could be qualitative data. And then there's mixed data, right? Some that are hardcore numbers and some that are just observations. Uh, I'm not a scientific methods person by any means. I'm a computer scientist by training, but in most of the other fields, like in psychology or in like biology, in health sciences, they'll always train like scientific data collection. But for some reason, computer scientists don't particularly care about that. So I've been actually complaining for about a year now that because of the machine learning age, computer scientists really should learn a lot more about data because all the models are really built on data, and we just computer science students are not trained enough about how well our data is fed into the models. Okay. Anyway, data collection. Yeah, data is like garbage. You better know what you're going to do with it before you collect it, Mark Twain. Or as in machine learning, we like to call this the principle of data garbage in, garbage out. So if you're going to train your model with some data, you better understand your data, and which is why I say that, so in NLP and LMs, companies will hire like a machine learning person to do this. But in fact, school of informations and statistics and like public health, they all have different branches of data science that focuses on very different things. Like if you're in data science and statistics, it's all like stats. I think Qifeng can talk about that. If you're in like public health and you do data science, it's like all about like, very public health application, but also very stats heavy. But if you do like, human-centric data science that in information, like in school informations, and that is a different kind of data science. So what kind of data should you collect? So one, it depends on your research question, right? Like, what is your research question? So we sort of talked about that last week. When you formulate your original paper, what is the research question you're asking? And then based on your research question, so think about that research question you have. And so what kind of data will prove your research question? So I'm going to ask Alvera because he's writing a survey paper and it is different from what everyone else is doing. So what is your research question and what kind of data are you collecting?
So our research question is basically like how different implementations of conversational agents have, evolved specifically in the healthcare domain.
Mm,
And for our data collection, well, we want to know like um, we have compiled a ton of papers
mm,
delving into this type of healthcare and also other applications, but mostly
yeah,
healthcare, and see, identify gaps and challenges and things that can be improved on in that area.
great, great, great. And then, right, so that is the research population. So what type of data is appropriate for your target population? So this is more medical sciences, biological sciences, where it targets human data. So maybe Sonia, maybe like what is your target population and what kind of data is appropriate for your target population?
I would say like for us it would be a lot of like qualitative data.
Mm,
We're mainly looking at like um students learning languages. So like
mm,
students who want to learn, maybe yeah. Uh, yeah.
that's great. And are you considering like English speaking students or North American students or European students or any particular type?
Um, I think like mainly like English speaking students.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that's
Okay, great. Research methodologies. Then, what data is appropriate for your research design and your desired outcome? Um, Sean, I guess. What is your research design and outcome? And what kind of method are you using to collect your data?
Yeah, so for research methodologies probably really important outcome data is specifically like the other methods applied to benchmarks in the same domain. So
Hmm.
then I think evaluating other methods on the same test splits uh, within the same benchmarks,
Mm.
just because we want to compare and show that our methods do have some improvements. In terms of design, um, sorry, could you elaborate more on the design part?
How are you designing your experiments?
Okay, yeah. So like mo most recently, I was like comparing um between like different like fine tuning ways. So for one, I was like using LoRa
Mm.
to fine tune. Another one was like a
Oh,
full
interesting.
supervised fine tuning,
Oh, okay,
and
okay.
then another one was just like
Yeah,
our
so
own. So then yeah.
you're comparing different methods, benchmarking them, and then you're probably doing some ablation studies too, right?
Yeah, so what I was doing was there were some like papers which I was looking pretty close at,
Mm-hmm.
which like the authors have like their own baselines, right? And they release
Mm.
like their training test splits.
Oh,
So
good.
like to conduct the ablation, I'm just like using the exact training test split. So I would say like trying to probably for like getting desired outcomes, it's probably
Mm.
best to like keep everything controlled and then for the most part in terms of data and
Very,
compare.
very
Yeah.
good. Very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Great, great, great. Right. Okay. Yeah. So again, this was designed by Tanya, who's in HCI. So they do a lot of human studies, people in medicine, in biomed, so in health sciences. So data collection techniques. So, this again is like, very human oriented, but there's direct techniques of collecting data like talking to people, having brainstorming or focus groups. You can interview the people or survey them or shadow and observe people. So this is like very direct techniques of talking to people. We're computer scientists, so instead of people, I guess you can think of like algorithms and models. And then indirect techniques is like, having sensors or observing as fly on the wall or online social media text. So that is what NASA is doing. we don't use a lot of these techniques, so we can sort of skip this part. In terms of data analysis, you know, again, we usually divide this based on models, but they look at data, human data in Tanya's research, in the person who created this data work. So, data sets could start off very scattered like this, and then you can decide like different slices or different characteristics or features that you want to evaluate them on, and you can do some analysis that you can make some decision on after. So there's these qualitative, so you can split your data up into different slices. But usually, this process of making your data organized takes time. So all of you are running experiments and you're sort of like collecting data and you're trying to do this. But you might have to iterate through this step 2 and 3. So, right now you're collecting data to create this data set, but you might have to do the analysis and make a decision on how you write your paper and then do the data. You might have to do this multiple iterations, right? Which is why I wanted you to have the data ready well in advance of whatever you're trying to write. And like think of this as a revision process, right? Like you could collect the data, you can do the analysis, then you write something, then you're like, oh, maybe I should do some more data collection. So you could collect another data set, do some more analysis, and then write something. So this decision could be like your paper write-up. Um, I would say like usually your write-up. Yeah, there's other ways of data and qualitative analysis. If you have a lot of, I don't think anyone here is doing digital humanities, except for Nazar's project. But Nazar, for your project, you will you might need to do like content analysis, you might do thematic analysis, you might profile your users, you might do some narrative analysis, you might discourse analysis. These are all different type of humanities analysis on text that you can look into for your text. But this is like very like NLP heavy oriented. And then what a lot of people like to do is to take their different findings and then write little things about it and then put it up on a sticky tack like this on the board to then help them outline their thoughts and ideas. So I like to do this for my paper when planning my paper, to print out. So remember, I guess Santiago and Miriam's project at some point, and I think same thing with Sean and Divnor. Like your project had like slides, right? And Miriam and Koze's project had. Oh, great. Thank you. The content analysis, Nasser. Perfect. Miriam's previous team lead has been working on the project for like 2.5, 3 years. So he has like hundreds of slides. So I like to print all the slides and then organize them like this. So I actually like to print my slides into like 16 to a page and then cut them up and then stick them on a board to like visualize what it might look like on a giant board. So I had done this before at work as well as like in an empty classroom in DC. And it really amused my colleagues. So they were entertained, but I really enjoyed it. And it sort of helped me organize things better and tell a better story versus like having like random jumble thoughts like this. It's sort of like the idea of a word cloud. So Alvaro, I think your project also had the same thing. I think Joyce has already divided into some themes. I don't know if that's the best themes. But Alvaro, I know that you guys looked at healthcare conversational agents. It would be nice to look at educational ones, although I feel like that is a giant. I think there's going to be like tons of conversational agents for education, but I think that's an interesting one to look at as well. And then maybe gaming as well. So those are interesting. Anyway, here's another analysis that people might do. So, here's a participant doing interviews, just free-flowing interviews and with the in a group. I think these are called interviews and focus group, brainstorming focus groups and interviews. So focus groups. So you can see that I don't do this, but if you're in human-computer interaction, they will go through and sort of circle in different colors, some of the major themes that came out. So share experience, green is technology, and then maybe like blue is, some other things. Yeah, so there's some tools that people might use. So these are some of them. Now for quantitative data analysis, so some of you have seen this. I think Santiago, you talked about some of the statistical analysis that you do. So, there's random sampling. All of you are doing some data splits. Make sure your data splits are random and that it's reproducible, repeatable, reproducible. Some quant, statistical analysis, machine learning. Those are all things that you can do. So, for example, this is like, a nice ZIF distribution of text of Harry Potter. And, these are the counts of the words that occur. So here are all the words that occur in Harry Potter, all the names, I guess, that occurs in Harry. So Harry and Hermione and Ron and Lisa. Okay, and then these are some of the tools you use in quantitative data analysis, right? Like, a lot of coding stuff. And this is like a lot of data analysis stuff. And so here is, a qualitative inquiry is like, last year you had 2 home runs all season. This year you have 5 in a month. What is the difference? And the quantitative analysis is the hardcore number 3. Yeah. And so, here's an example of a data grid we set up. Across the top, we have languages and then the data sets, the data domains, Flores, Bible, government. So Flores is like a generic data set. Bible is obviously religious. Government is, like a technical government data set. And then we have some different data set sizes and some different data sets. And then we have different models, right? The transformer versus empire. And then we ran the experiments and then we calculated the standard deviations on them. So that's one way of collecting data. Okay. So that's a very boring presentation about data because you need data to write a paper. I did this during my master's, so I'm teaching you this early that the paper is not about your methodology or your experimental results. It is actually about your discussion and how well you discuss the contributions. So remember last week, I asked you to create an introduction, make a plan. So first, tell me your contribution, tell me the problem you're solving, and the evaluations that proves it. So those 3 points that are then expanded into 5 major points, which is what the task. And then these 2 additional ones is the state of the art and the flaws in the state of the art. So this is your literature review. And then your idea or your work, this is like your method, and then proof that it works. So this is the actual experimental part, which is very, very important. Okay. All right. So I'm not teaching things in order this time around just because we have a compressed timeline. I'll probably be teaching things fully in the fall because I have like 4 graduate students starting in the fall. Okay. So experimental results. Where's the experimental results? Discussion results. Okay, where's the results? Sorry, I'm looking for the results section. Okay, right. So by this time, hopefully, people can write their materials and methods section. And you can read up here, like materials and methods. I'll talk to you about next week. But usually in the materials and methods section, it's just like the step-by-step recipe of what you did. So just like write down what you did so somebody like some undergraduate student in 2nd year, if they show up tomorrow, they can reproduce what you did. And that's all you need to do for the methodology right now. I'll tell you next week what you need to do for the methodology section because the ARR deadline's upcoming. But for the results, right. So really? Where is my results section? Sorry. I keep looking for my results section. I can't find it. I'm very confused with myself. I guess that's okay. Oh, here it is. Right. So your results, you want to organize from the most important result to the least important results. So this means you need to have everything written. You have to have all your experiments run. You might run multiple ones. You might have done multiple iterations. I remember during my PhD, by the end of it, I had all these experiments that my supervisor didn't understand and didn't want in the paper. So I was very sad. It didn't make it into the paper, but it made it into my thesis. Although I don't know if my thesis reader understood it either. But so that was bad on my part for not writing it clearly. But you want to organize your results from the most important ones to the least important ones. And then you have writing signals and writing principles. And then I'll talk to you a little bit more about overall results. So you should have kept a lab notebook, and then you should have, some of these experiments like this, right? So like over here, you have models versus like parameters, and then also by data sets, also by runtimes and, improvements. This one is different methods by the number of parameters and the percentage of parameters and how similar um, the data set was. I think this is all the same paper. And then, yeah, this was our parameter efficient fine-tuning paper. It's getting reasonably cited for a short findings paper. So very pleased. Yeah, so you see, we tried different models, the same model with different parameters, and then we had some different calculations. So we had like the number of parameters and the percentage of parameter changes. Then we have in-domain data set, out-domain data set, and the runtime. Remember to save your models if you're training models. We had to, I think once our models got deleted and then we couldn't rerun new data sets, or we couldn't rerun new evaluation metrics, which was very annoying. So it made things very difficult when it comes to doing the author response and rebuttal. So make sure to save your data and your model. Yeah. So usually in computer science, we don't call things benchmark and analysis. We call things results and discussions. And sometimes they're combined together and sometimes they're separate. So it just depends on the venue and depends on how you want to write it in a way that's the most clear to convey your ideas to your readers. Usually for ACL, ARR, I like to combine results and discussions together so that you can tell this, you say, here's the results and this is what it means in the discussion so that the story is clear. In terms of the content, like I said, you want to go from the most relevant results. So think about your research question. What is the research question that you're working on? And what is the results that proves it the best? And then you want to interpret your data for your readers. So you want to summarize and analyze whatever that means, whatever that data means, right? Like don't just list a bunch of numbers and leave it, right? Which is why we combine the results, which are the numbers, and the discussion, which is the interpretation of the results. So, show them the numbers, tell them what it means, and then interpret it. Tell them why it's important. So you go from the most important to least important. So anything that answers your research question directly and very significantly, put it at the beginning. And then you want to emphasize and signal your results and subordinate any secondary information. So things that doesn't answer the question. So you could have I remember by the time it was my PhD thesis, my main thesis had maybe 3 major experiments, and each experiment might have 5 to 7 results. I'm not going to show people 21 experimental results. I'm just going to show them the most important ones, right? And anything that's not important, usually we move it to the appendix. But that's something we decide sort of later on when we're writing. Now, this is very important. Every single results paragraph will have 1, the purpose and the background of why you're doing it. 2, the approach that you're taking, right? How did you run the experiments? So 1, why you're doing it. 2, how you're doing it. And then 3, the results is just the numbers. And the interpretation is what do these numbers mean? It really annoys me when people are missing this first part. A lot of times people just talk about results and interpretation. It's very hard to read a paper when every section is just about these 2 things. You have to tell me why you're doing something right away. This is super important for clear writing. It is the most important thing. And then a lot of times people then forget to tell me how they did it. What are the steps that you did to do the experiments. This is just for context. I want to know why you're doing something and then how or what you're doing for the experiments. Then when I read the numbers and why you got to those numbers, then it makes sense to me, right? Like it's a complete story. It's not like just like some numbers and some interpretations, and I have no idea where these numbers come from, why you're looking at these numbers, why you have these interpretations. So this sort of like gives a really holistic story. So if I ever complain about your results not being clear, I'll just tell you to follow these steps. And I usually have a why cat. This is a very confused cat. Um, and so if I don't understand something, is because this is just me asking you why. Oh, so sorry. The writing center has a better picture of a why cat, but it's basically a picture of a grumpy cat asking why, because I don't understand what's going on. So usually I'll have like a cat or a dog that asks why, because I don't know what's going on in your experimental results. So here we go. So don't make me grumpy like this cat. But even if I'm grumpy, that's just because I want to know more about what's going on in your experiments. Okay. So again, use phrase bank is right here. So use phrase bank to help you generate write your paper. Again, phrase bank was the old style of ChatGPT. But the graph shows that there's a slight rise or fall. So don't use ChatGPT. Use PhraseBank and replace it. So again, here I said you need 4 things, right? Your purpose, why you're doing something, your experimental approach, how you're doing it, your results and your interpretation. So then here are some phrases and signals that you can follow, right? Like here's the purpose, like to determine whether this algorithm works, we ran 5 different open models on the data set called, I don't know, like Iroko bench. And in our table, we found that, I don't know, that it's always the bigger the model, the better the results, indicating that, model, I don't know, like proving that the scaling law is consistent with the scaling law that bigger data sets and bigger models perform better, something like that. So, and that makes a really cohesive story. If we just follow the phrase bank. So just pick one from here, pick one from here, pick one from here, pick one from here, and there you go. Plug it in, and then you can talk about your results. Yeah. And so there's some important principles for writing the results. We want to choose the words carefully. Be very precise. Again, I really complain about using Gen AI to write because the wordings are just very loose and imprecise, and it makes me angry. Avoid using jargons and avoid using hedging words. Remember, last week I talked about hedging. Significant means statistically significant. And use past tense for results, but present tense for things that are always true, right? Like the sky is blue. It's not that the sky was blue, the sky is always blue. So if it's like a scientific, like the gravity is always acting on you. So for truth statements, you can use present tense, but otherwise everything else use past tense. Yeah, so there's some common problems in the result sections, like if you're missing one of the things that I asked you to. Right now, you can add as much information as you want. We can move it to the appendix later. You have too much experimental details or, yeah. Yeah, so that is for experimental results. I think one thing that I forgot to tell you, so sorry, I usually do this section first, but I guess I'll just tell you this now. For experimental results, what is also important to show you is, you might want to strategize how you want to show the data. So all of you are running results right now, you're getting numbers. Start off by showing me your table, right? Where's the table? So start off by showing me a table of results. I think I show you Kose's fluorescent green table before, which I was like, whoa, but he got his paper published, so who can complain? So start off by, putting your results into a table. But once you have the table, you want to start plotting it into different graphs and decide, which graph can demonstrate your results the best. So, you can interpret and analyze your data and slice it in many different ways, right? Like these bar graphs here. Why did we decide at the end to compare them by 0 and 5 shots and divide them by models? Why didn't we divide them by shots, right? Well, why didn't we plot them as line graphs by 0 shot, 5 shot, 10 shot, 15 shot, 20 shot, and then did a line graph, right? So there has to be, you have to take your table and interpret it in different ways and come up with different visualizations and see which one really interprets the story the best. So, I'm telling you right now that when you write your results, you should write it in this way, right? I say, where did it go again? Sorry. When I say write your results, you should write it as, purpose, approach, results, interpretation. But this result part and the interpretation, you might go through many iterations of how you interpret the data. You could interpret it as a bar graph. You can interpret it as a line graph. You can interpret it as a scatter graph. So I think so next week I can talk to you a little bit about the different graphs that you can use to interpret it. Yeah, so you can interpret it as a line graph like this, or you can interpret it as a bar graph and a line graph. So you can see that, there's some bar graphs and line graphs here. You can interpret it as a pie chart. You can also have, maybe like a world map, which is very appropriate for the multilingual, multicultural research that we do. Lately, I really like spider graphs like this. We also have these violin plots. I would recommend like one-sided violin plots because that is really nice. Like you can show the distribution and then with a box in between. I really like heat maps. So any table like this, you can put a heat map on top of it. Again, don't use red or green because people are colorblind. But there's different ways of plotting heat maps. So these are some different ways that you can do it. You can do like a world geography map, which I really like. This is a heat map with a dendrogram, which is interesting. I tried to show this to my supervisor and he didn't buy it. So, but I like it. You can also do like heat maps as a scatter plot. So you have 1 dimension, 2 dimension. 3rd dimension is the size of the circles. And 4th dimension is the color in those circles. So you can see you can plot 4 different things in this one graph here. So this is really cute. This is a cutesy example. I think the LinguaQuest team, in their project, they plotted all these different graphs. So they did like a heat map like this. They did some bar graphs with some like violin plots and some bar plots. They also did some distribution plots like this. They did many different plots. And then I think just by testing things out and trying very many different ways of visualizing it and doing data analysis on it, they were able to get like a short 4-page poster paper out for Sakai. And Sakai is really, really, really hard to get into. So I was very impressed because even I cannot get myself into Sakai. Okay, so next week we'll talk a little bit about some of these graphs, and then we'll go back and talk about the methodology. I think methodology is like the easiest thing. So yeah, we can talk about that next week. Okay, so that